Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. On August 29, 1949, an atomic bomb was detonated here for the first time in the history of the Soviet Union. Today, more than 70 years later, the radiation absorbed by the soil has not yet dissipated. Dusty broken dirt road, monotonous, yellow-grey landscape of endless steppe. On the way, there are countless block or petrified soil of various size. Here, they are called bombs. These are the results of the release from the explosion. We are approaching the lake. Around, like huge red Martian hills, lies the ground turned inside out. Early morning, January 15, 1965, the long, suffering land swung sharply and reared up. A charge, 9 times the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, broke the ground. Tons of stones were scattered up to 8 kilometers from the epicenter of the explosion. According to eyewitnesses, a dust cloud covered the sky of Semey for several days, turning daylight into evening twilight. The explosion created a crater 100 meters deep and more than 400 meters in diameter. The high temperature melted stones and formed a mirror glass bottom. The spring fluid filled the crater of the explosion. This is how the artificial reservoir Atomny Lake, Atomkol, was formed. Later, to transform water from the Ashesu and Shagan rivers, they dug canals and made the water flowing. Today, the total capacity of Atomkol is 20 million cubic meters. Approaching the atomic lake, we found an unexpectedly idyllic picture. This unique historical object of the nuclear era is, as if drawn with a compass, surprisingly round in shape. The mirror surface of the lake, but the water seems to be clean and transparent. You can see its glassy bottom. Local fishermen have settled down on the shore with fishing rods. This is our favorite spot for carp, as extreme fishing enthusiastic. Our local fish have adapted even in this radioactive water. However, inhabited exotic species, even Amazonian piranhas, did not take root. Atomic Lake was the beginning of the program Peaceful Atom, which was aimed at creating of artificial water utilities, digging canals, opening ore deposits for the country's economy. Unfortunately, the idea turned to be utopian. While Moscow was proudly reporting on its success, the local population were disappeared into thin air from incurable illness. The USSR government was very proud of the artificial lake they created. Experiments were carried out to study the effect of residual radiation on living organisms. In 1974, the experimental station at Atomkol was closed. But even today, after 3 decades, the soil at Atomkol retains dangerously high radioactivity. The atomic lake is located near the Chagan River, 100 kilometers southwest of the city of Semey. On the way, there are the villages of Kazimshek and Znamenka. Livestock farms with wide pastures are working. However, this is not a green jailau, but a large grey plateau. A part of our hearts will stay here forever. Chagans from different times and countries, 1950 to 1994. This is an inscription on a concrete memorial at the entrance to the city of Chagan, or Semipalatinsk 4, which has never been listed on any geographical map. We are greeted by the ruins of concrete with torn-out reinforcement and shuttered empty windows of a grey 5-story building. Throughout the territory of destroyed trenches of electric and heating networks were dug. Sometimes you can stumble upon the tanks of former residents. a notebook, a worn-out bag, telephone receiver. Smooth concrete streets almost not overgrown with grass and not covered with garbage. This caused with general devastation. The white concrete pavement resembles the runway of the Chagan Air Base, which even by today's standard has an incredible 4 kilometers long runway. The thickness of the concrete pavement of 1 meter is capable of withstanding space loads. Here, huge combat aircraft and cargo bombers were received and sent into the sky. The 79th Bomber Division, with more than 100 Tu-95 missile carriers, was located here. Once, it was a hometown of almost 12,000 people, families of the military and employees of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. Life was in full swing. Army order train, the officers' house, a stadium, shops, a hotel, a kindergarten, and a school. Today, Chagan is a ghost town, but there is no word Chagan in the Kazakh language. However, in translation from Mongolian, it means white, whitish, ash. The Semipalatinsk nuclear test site is located 170 kilometers from the city of Semey and only 50 kilometers from the city of Kurchatov. Semipalatinsk nuclear test site is 18,500 square kilometers or 7,140 miles squared, which is equal to the territories of Slovenia or Israel. 456 nuclear tests in 40 years. The power of the explosions was 2,500 times stronger than the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 1.5 million people affected. The closer to the epicenter, the more often you come across giant, bent fingers of concrete pillars, bridged, torn in half and heaped to one side, hills of bunkers, plates, observation towers, littered with earth like buried wings of planes. There are trenches everywhere, more and more. Experimental field is one of the several sites of a nuclear test site with an area of 13 square kilometers. It was intended for atmospheric ground and air nuclear tests. It is the site of the first land explosion and many other nuclear explosions over a period of 13 years from 1949 to 1962. We are heading to the site of the first explosion, but before that we had to put on a special protective suit, white overalls, high rubber shoe covers, gloves, and a special respirator mask. All this is to protect against alpha rays, as the accompanying employee of the nuclear test site explained. According to him, today at the experimental field, the main source of radiation is the pieces of melted soil named Cheritonis, honor of nuclear scientist Yuliy Khariton. Here is the place of the first explosion, an overground foundation bathed with water and definitely with some kind of living creatures. 6 microsieverts per hour, an alarmingly ringing dosimeter, and today shows a dangerously high level of radiation. For comparison, an indicator of 0.3 microsieverts per hour is considered acceptable. During the years of nuclear tests, in the center of the experimental field, there was a metal tower 30 meters high on which a nuclear charge was located. Measuring equipment, various military and civilian objects were installed from it with a certain sequence and interval. Groups of animals were also brought to determine the damaging factor of a nuclear explosion, not only on objects, but also on living organisms. The experimental field, surrounded on 3 sides by low mountains, retains the bitter memory of the impact of nuclear explosions. There are destroyed dark concrete 4-story buildings that were built for measuring instruments and long armored cameras, witnesses of merciless nuclear tests. The city of Kurchatov. Here are the National Nuclear Center of the Republic of Kazakhstan and the Museum of the Semipalatinsk test site, which preserves the great but dark legacy of the past. This museum, founded in 1972, this is the only museum which doors are open to anyone interested in the activities of the nuclear test site. Here is the office of the father of Soviet atomic bomb, Igor Vasilievich Kurchatov, who from 1949 to 1955 led the nuclear test at the Semipalatinsk test site. The expositions of the museum includes various equipment, models, photographs, unique scientific documents, including top secret materials. All of this represents the military and scientific activities of the test site, marked by special historical events of the 20th century. Among the equipment handed over after the closure of the test site, there is the most unique programmable machine, the main control panel from which commands were sent to all other devices, atomic bomb itself, to detonate. The huge green apparatus in the center of the hall looks like a double telescope, long-focused cinema camera AKS 2000 for large-scale shooting of experimental work, shoot 1 million frames per second. High-speed shooting made it possible to determine the power of the explosion in TNC equivalent. The model of the experimental field reflects with historical accuracy the preparation for the first nuclear test of USSR on August 29, 1949. The model contains models of measuring devices in various military and civilian applications, as well as biopoints as part of the test objects with animals. Probably the darkest part of the museum is the photographs and artifacts from the epicenter of a nuclear explosion. They show damaged organs and tissues of experimental animals. The granite stone boiled from the high temperature and turned into a bobby alloy resembling a pumice stone. If this happened to a stone, then what will happen to the human? The nuclear test site has deprived many of a happy childhood, the right to a normal life, and precisely crippled the fate of many people. The author of the book Semipalatinsk Tragedy, Medeusz Sarkisian, writes that such well-known scientists and public figures as Mukhtar Awezov and Kanish Satpayev spoke at scientific conference in Moscow, Almaty, at the congresses of the USSR Rights Union, talk about the consequences of nuclear explosion, about incurable diseases, suicide of their fellow countrymen. Similar facts in the collection of essays by Kemen Orazalin, Abay Auna Sayahat. In 1957, in Japan, at the International Conference of Nuclear Policy, the famous writer Mukhtar Awezov made a speech about disastrous impact of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site on the health of the local population. Then it was a bold step, but unfortunately, Mukhtar Awezov was remained unheard, and horrible arms race has begun. And at the Semipalatinsk test site, another nuclear bomb was ready for testing. Activists of the Nevada Semipalatinsk anti-nuclear movement facilitated the closure of the largest and most dangerous nuclear test site in the Soviet Union. This movement has united millions of Kazakhstanis. It happened on August 29, 1991. This year, one of the most ambitious international projects of the National Nuclear Center was implemented to bring the experimental field into a safe state. In the city of Semey, on the island of Bechalik, a monument stronger than death is erected. It is erected in memory of the victims of nuclear test site. Today, children and their parents walk here. Young people spend their time calmly. Everyone looks happy. May a bright nuclear outbreak, which may be the last, never disturb our earth. Long live life. We are coming home. In the hot air of the evening sky, we see the sunset. The sun will rise tomorrow and warm everyone with its warm rays.